Welcome to So Guided, a spiritual travel guide for the curious. Join Carissa and Jenny, ordinary people exploring all the extraordinary ways we can connect to the universe. Each week, they investigate another spiritual modality and adventure through all the wild ways we can find high vibes, hope, and ultimately, enlightenment.
Hello and welcome to another episode of So Guided. In today's episode, we are going to talk about Jenny's Akashic record reading. This was something that she did after we discussed the Akashic records, and oh my God, what she learned on this will blow your mind. There is some full circle stuff that is, we didn't even believe it could be, and you're going to listen and have your jaw drop to the floor like mine did. You've got questions? So do we. Let's do this. Hello, how are you today?
So excited.
So excited. This is such one of our really, really good stories today. So let's just jump right into Weekly Woo Woo. I'll go first. I have a really strong one. So, and it's strong in the fact that it actually happened with my mom, and my mom does not get signs a lot. And
or
so
you've told me she gets them
she doesn't
and then doesn't believe them.
She's blind to them.
Yeah.
I feel like she has some sort of like block or something on where she could literally she could see an apparition of my grandma in front of her and not think it's a sign. Like it is, she's just blind to them all the time. So she was actually over my house, and it was my grandma's birthday. And, obviously we talked about my grandma, and that's her mom who has passed away, who I was very close to, and she was very close to. And so I had asked her, I'm like, Mom, have you gotten any signs from grandma today on my grandma's birthday? And of course she was like, no, I haven't seen any. Like, no, I haven't gotten any. And I said to her, I'm like, don't worry, I'm sure she'll send a deer. I'm sure she'll send a deer to us sometime soon. And she was like, yeah, And so no exaggeration, we were in the playroom of my house, walked out to the living room, look out the window, and there is a beautiful deer out my backyard just staring at us. And I call my mom, like, Mom, look at him. Like, there's a deer. There it is.
This is right after you talked
I'm not even kidding, less than a minute later.
Okay.
Like, I'm not kidding. Right. We walked out and saw a deer. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, Mom. And it was by itself. It was looking up the window at us, staring at us. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, Mom. I'm like, it's grandma. It's literally my grandma. She's a deer. And so, but it was so crazy. And I'm like, do you see it? Do you believe it? She's like, wow, yes. And of course, she buys into it then, and it was great. But it was like one of those things that I think if I hadn't have been there, she probably wouldn't even have put two and two together anyway. But it was such a perfect sign right after I said it, and it was so special and so perfect. And I know my grandma came to prove a point and to remind my mom that she's getting signs. And again, as like with my mom, I've mentioned before, she just doesn't get them. So this was so nice. I was so happy. I was giddy. I couldn't wait to tell you and to tell everybody. So.
I love it. I love it when a non-believer, the sign is so big, they're like, I'm in.
Exactly. So big. Like they have to believe. And again, like with me there, I pushed it in her face. Like, look, it's a sign. Like, look, like let it absorb into your body, into your soul. Like, believe it, see it, feel it. So, and she did.
Yay.
So it was awesome.
I have a cool woo-woo. This one is actually like kind of watching someone else almost be intuitive, and then it related to me. So it was super cool. So since our podcast has gone live, we've gotten all sorts of stories, and one of my, and a lot of connections, right? People are saying, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so. So an old friend in San Diego told me, oh my gosh, my sister, Jessica, has a podcast called She Podcast. And their sole purpose, what they do, is empowering women on how to be better podcasters.
Yeah, that's so funny.
That is what she does. And she has an amazing following, a lovely podcast, and everything actually we need to tune into. I love
it. Writing it down now.
Awesome. So she was delightful enough to just do a Zoom date with me. She doesn't live near us. And she's just hilarious, matter-of-fact lady. Like, not woo-woo, furthest thing from woo-woo, funny sense of humor, like...
All business?
Yeah, all business and like, hilarious.
Smart, yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, is she going to think my woo-woo is weird? But we're at a point where we embrace it. And I'm like, okay. So I was getting her advice. And a really strange thing happened. We went on the subject of Instagram, and I mentioned how I don't like it. Mm-hmm. And as you know, so I have a design business with an Instagram account. And it's small but active.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
you have a lot of followers on your business.
I took a pause.
Yeah,
it was too much. It actually ended up being too much. So I paused it for my design business.
Yeah.
And now our little fun handful of little humans on our Instagram now. I'm doing that. But I paused the other one. And she said to me, I looked you up. Why are you not using your other audience and like bridging the gap between the two? And I said, I feel misaligned. My design business feels misaligned with my spiritual podcast, and I don't know how to bridge the gap. And now I don't want to go back to Pretty Design World exclusively because it doesn't settle right for me. It doesn't resonate right. Now, that night, the night before I talked to her, I journaled.
Okay.
And what came out in my journaling was that I actually missed Instagram, my design community I had built. And I had wrote that I had felt misaligned, but that was there a way I could align it? So this woman, Jessica, says, who's not woo-woo, I have the goosebumps right now. You are 100% meant to bridge the gap. You're supposed to be pursuing intuitive design, which is, a word I put in the world that I want to put out in the universe. I believe in something in my heart and soul called intuitive design, and no one's doing it. It's not being influenced by trends or images. It's kind of like tapping in more into you as a human and like your feelings and your vibes, and that's where you design from. And if I'm being truthful, I think that's how I design for everyone. So this person who's a podcast tech woman, who's hilarious and not woo-woo, tells me that this is meant to be in the world, and she doesn't know I journaled these words last night, says the words. And I had full body chills. I'm like, okay, thank you. This is meant to be. And now, thank you, Jessica. Because of her, I have re-scripted in my brain how I'm going to return to Instagram for my design business, which was never woo-woo, and I'm going to show up as who the fuck I am today. I'm going to show up as Jenny, the intuitive designer, and I'm bringing it into my world.
Oh my God. Okay, so wait. Okay. So you've told me that you met with Jessica, and you told me bits and pieces. Yes. You did not tell me this exact woo-woo. You saved it for the woo-woo, and I am in shock because I don't even know if you remember. I think you must. But when we went on that witch retreat, retreat. Okay, so we've talked about the witch retreat before. We had some really interesting experience there. But at the witch retreat, this is prior to the podcast, this is when we were first dabbling in spirituality, trying to understand. One of the key takeaways that you had at the witch retreat was intuitive design. You came up with that 3 years ago.
3 years ago, and I ignored it.
But you said it to me on the way.
Word.
You said it in front of a bunch of these women. You actually said it hey, intuitive design is coming to me. On the way home in the car, we talked about it.
When we were tripping?
Yeah, when we were tripping balls from having a spell cast on us. So we were literally you were talking about it then though. You're I could do this intuitive design. I'm oh my God, 100%. And we were even saying then that you already do that. And as part of you kind of know what people are going to be doing. You, even when you designed my house and helped me, you knew, this is again prior to all of this, you could read me or kind of my thoughts. And the fact that this is coming full circle 3 years later.
And after I journaled the words again.
And after you journaled the words, it returned to you full circle. The connectedness and the things that come around are, again, you can't make this stuff up.
You cannot make it
up. And
up.
it's crazy. And oh my God, what evidence. The fact that you journaled intuitive design and it came back up after so long.
And then she said the words. And they're not, this is not
those
a term people use in the word.
And a businesswoman who has nothing to do with design or spirituality as her specialty. Saying that.
No, and it just, and like I said, we love when
oh my God. What is that? Synchronicity or serendipity? What is it? It's one of those words.
It's everything.
So crazy.
It's everything. It feels like she's,
oh my God.
When we did our signs episode where someone was placed to give you the message you need?
Yes.
That was that. But it was also synchronicity at the exact moment I needed it. It was 10 signs in one.
Oh
and quite frankly, I'm about to, as the kids go back to school and I get recheck my world that isn't momming and go back into business mode, I'm really embracing this. And I think also curing it from someone who isn't of that world and it made sense to her made me feel even braver to try. You know what I mean? She just empowered me. So I'm ready. I don't know what intuitive design means fully, but I've started to journal on it and I'm showing up as authentic me, and I am an intuitive designer.
I love it. Oh gosh, it's so
good.
It's so connected. It's so awesome. That's a great woo, and it actually, again, ties into another thing that we're talking about today is how things come full circle and the patterns in our life that come up. It's such a perfect segue because today we're going to talk about Jenny's Akashic record reading. Now, if you guys have listened to the episode that I fumbled through trying to tell and share what the Akashic records were, this is something that came up with me a lot. I kept hearing the words. I kept trying to understand what it was. And through that, Jenny was like, I want to have an Akashic record reading done. We'll share it. Do you want to read and remind people what the Akashic record
Totally.
are?
I love this. So to be honest, just to clarify too, when we did the Akashic Records episode, it was so new to us.
So new.
I don't know that I even got it while we were talking about it. I think, did you?
Oh my God,
I think it's kind of revealed itself over time.
No, well, even now, it's still one of those things. Like, there was so much information on it that it was almost overwhelming.
Yeah.
But what it kind of came down to is, I think we kind of took our own thoughts on it, is that it's basically the keeper of everything that's happened,
the knowledge of everything,
past, present, and future. And I think when I was sharing and what I had seen is like, how do you access it? And like, you can access it yourself, you can have a reading. And so one of the things that I'm so excited you did was you got a professional reading, and how that happened you can share, because that's a cool story in itself. But like, that is, it was hard to just get.
It is. It's hard to process. I think I had looked up visuals for our Instagram, full circle, and they keep showing libraries. So it's as if you go and retrieve information on books, and there's many, many chapters and many, many books about it, and you could pull what you need. So the place I actually got my reading has a lovely little synopsis I'm going to read, because I thought it was a great way of hearing it. The Akashic vibrational field contains your soul's wisdom and experiences over many lifetimes, and helps you figure out how to move forward healing and self-actualization. Blah, blah, blah will access your unique Akashic records to bring insight into life's challenges and reveal authentic, fulfilling choices based on ancient wisdom. I thought that was a cool one.
That is. Simplified.
And then to go back to the visual that I like, it's a library of all the knowledge of our lifetimes, and you can say, I'd like chapter 1. I'd like to access chapter 15. And you could pull it out and find out information.
Right.
So when we talked about the Akashic, I kind of thought that this was just done through meditation, or you do it. We didn't even really know that people read it. So there are people that specialize in reading your Akashic records.
Right.
Okay. I don't know how you get credentials on it, but cool.
I don't either. Yeah.
Super
I guess.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So it was kind of serendipitous how I got the reading. I actually didn't really care to have it read. I've always liked the terminology of past life regression or something.
Well, and it was very similar, and you'd have the past life regression, so you're like, oh, do I need the Akashic records? What's the difference?
So I was at Miraval, which a lot of our listeners are local. So if you are, holy cow, Miraval is a resort near us that has a spiritual influence. Quite frankly, probably 10 of these stories we've told you and will tell you are from this place. It's amazing.
Right. And they have a location in Arizona and Texas. So if you're not local, if you're on the West Coast, like there's...
by the way, we're just saying this because we're obsessed. And no one told us to say that they're amazing, and we are like, so obsessed. Anyway, so I went there with Brian in the winter, and I had one of my sessions canceled. So the resort stepped up to the plate and said, okay, that was canceled. You could pick any one-on-one session you want, which is super cool because they cost extra money.
Yeah,
and so I got it. It was amazing. So I thought, all right, I'm going to pick something I wouldn't have normally picked. So I went through all the options, and I picked an Akashic reading. And I really showed up not that excited and not knowing what I was going to do.
Right.
So here's the coolest thing. We've talked ad nauseum about past life regressions.
Right.
We've done this. What is so awesome about this is instead of us retrieving the information and talking about it coming from our mind, our brain, our dreamlike sequence, instead the person is seeing our Akashic records. She's reading me.
So it's more of like almost like a psychic reading where she's able to access your Akashic records.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. Because that's one of the problems with the past life that I had, was that I feel like I was making so much stuff up because it was just me, and I feel like it was my imagination. Even if you're supposed to buy it or believe it, it's hard to prove with the evidence. Whereas this, if someone tells you it and you're like, whoa, where'd you get that?
Yes.
That's way more my speed.
Exactly. So I love this. So the moment I realized I wasn't retrieving anything, I actually had like a, great.
Because did you think you were going to when you walked in?
I did. I really did. So that was awesome. So just to set the stage, you're in an office. It's just like if you were at a therapy session. I'm on a couch. She's in a wheelie chair in front of me.
Are you laying down?
No, sitting up.
Okay.
Just like we're doing right now, like sitting on a couch talking. And
eyes closed or like meditating?
No,
or just, okay.
No, I mean, it was so less like that than
that's what I was thinking. From all the like the prayers and the access in, I thought it was very like meditative, eyes closed, getting to like this other like ether or whatever it kept saying. Like, okay.
So what she did do, so you're not wrong. Okay. There's a process, but it was not like a hypnosis or a meditation.
Okay.
So our eyes are open. She goes through the prayer, the opening prayer that you shared with us when you told us about Akashic. The exact prayer. So and cool. She did the thing where I think it unlocks it. It's kind of cool. She says your full name. I think it even included my middle name and my maiden name and my married name.
Oh, that's so cool.
And she says it however many times. And I think that's what unlocks it. It's very, very cool. So she unlocks my Akashic Records. And that's how we start. We're just sitting, talking, and it's like a therapy session. And she's seeing something I do not.
Do you feel an energy shift like when a psychic, when you go to a psychic? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's a lightness in the room.
Okay.
So she comes in with the big. Now, you know this. I've told you this story once before, and this is just crazy. She just goes in with, immediately, I am so sorry. This is hard to tell you the visual that I have first. But in one of your most traumatic lifetimes, you were surrounded in a shame circle by villagers. You were a pagan priestess, kind of a witch of the town, and you help people, and you are a part of healing there. But the tides had shifted in religion. And your town gathered around you, put you on a stake, and you were surrounded in a shame circle where you were called names and horrible words like slut, whore, witch, and rocks were thrown at you, and you were burned at the stake in a shame circle.
I've heard this story before, but not in a long time, and I'm still in disbelief and awe that she said that after knowing what has happened to you in this lifetime and how that has come full circle. I don't even know. That's crazy.
I had a visceral reaction. So when she said it, instead of like, I don't know how to explain it. You hear information, it comes and goes in your life, right? You hear stories, you hear information. I felt an earthquake, an avalanche of emotions, of energy inside of me that resonated to the core of who I was. And as I retell the story, I feel a little foolish, like, is it true, is it not? In this moment, and actually retelling it, I'm feeling it again.
I see you feeling it. I feel it. I can feel the energy shift right now on me, knowing that it's so...
I was like, yes, that did happen. I felt to my soul, holy shit, this keeps happening to me. This has happened then, and it happened this lifetime. And what's wild is she chose a few words that were repetitive of my lighter version of a story that if you guys heard my story that I shared that was insanely vulnerable and quite frankly embarrassing and really hard to share, she's basically telling me a different version of it playing out in another lifetime. She even is using words where it was the circle and the shame circle
and the
same words. And
you had used that word to describe it to me prior to having this reading. And I've never heard the word shame circle until you said it to me the first time explaining to you what had happened. Before any of the podcast stuff.
No.
It's not like a common word. It's like your intuitive design. It's not like a common thing people know or you.
No. And she said you had beautiful healing, intuitive gifts. You were a Seeress, I think is the word. Yeah. And people thought it was wonderful until they didn't and they turned on you. And in this lifetime, this was the first lifetime that I then played it out. She said, you play this out in one shape or form in every lifetime as a pattern, and it's going to show up in different ways, but in some form of the similar action. And it is that my soul learned to hide my gifts. So what's crazy is this lifetime really, with the shame circle, really mimics a physical visual I have from this life that played out. But she continues to share other lifetimes, which are super cool.
Yeah.
Where she said I was taught to not shine my light and to hide them, and they weren't safe. So she sees this and plays it out. She had one life that was really cool because it's something she said, I've never heard of this before, neither have I. She said in one of my lifetimes in like the Renaissance, I was an artist and my prophecy was shown in artwork. And I was able to hide my skill or talent in that lifetime. I actually figured out a way to not be like showing it all the way because I just had beautiful art. But people that were in the know would secretly come to me and know that like I could do a reading of it by doing it through art. So I draw.
So you could like tell the future through
art in that life. And that was like a very cool lifetime where I never was exposed and I found a hidden way to do it through art, which we both actually ended up talking about. How cool is that? I wonder if anyone does that, because it's a cool story.
Well, it's so cool. And also it's like another like point of evidence, like I've never even heard of that. And,
Me
for her
either.
to see that and to be like,
How
wow, I've never
random.
heard of this. It's not like
How
she's telling, like,
random.
everyone's hearing that. Like, that's really interesting.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So,
And you were able, that's how you hid your gifts.
that's
It's
how
like
I
hiding
hid
in plain
that.
sight. That's,
but as she went through, she went in and out of lifetimes, but really focused on that one and then the other one. But went through multiple ones and just said she just saw this repeated theme that my soul is one of my soul purposes to work through in Earth School is to figure out how to shine my light and not hide talents and not hide gifts. This really resonates with me because we've talked about, like, I have intuitive stuff and I've never felt like I fully expressed it, to be honest. It feels like there's a cloud or a veil over it. This is like a term. I almost feel like there's, like, someone has a spider web over my I feel like I have so much more to give and so much intuitive abilities. And despite this story and hearing it, like, I haven't been able to, like, take that off.
Right.
And I've also, in this lifetime, a massive pattern of this lifetime, if you don't mind circling back to it, is the story I told about being targeted and bullied and surrounded in a shame circle in this life, in a parking lot, in this lifetime, and being called similar words. I learned not to shine my light.
Oh, you dimmed your,
I dimmed my light. And that taught me to keep going. Anyway, these two things really resonated with me. The fact that I had intuitive abilities, but I've learned not to, like, embrace them.
Yep.
And second is that who I am is shameful and to hide it. And to hide any, like, female power. I'd even, like, go as far as to say in the work world, when I have successes, like, I don't know how to tell you, like, I got to have my house featured in a magazine. I didn't, like, tell people about it. Like, I'm not a person who goes out there and is like, look at what happened. Like,
no, I know.
It was, like, one of the highlights of my life, and I felt shame sharing it.
Oh, I felt like I was telling more people about your magazine than you were.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It's, like, it's wild. So these, like, themes that, like, go throughout my life woven. This woman who doesn't know
you at all.
By the way, I don't validate anything she says as something until later in our conversation. So she's just going
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
So just, like, while she's telling you this, like, obviously you're, like, having this visceral reaction and you're like, oh my God. Is she just continuing to go? Is she seeing a vision? Are you asking questions? Or is she asking for validation? Or
she isn't. I think she's probably seeing. I'm not a poker face.
Yeah.
Like I said, the first one felt like a happy punch in the face. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel this to my core. And then I hear the story, and we were playing out the lifetime she was seeing and talking about, which was very cool. But there was a point where I realized I have to circle back to the first lifetime she talked about.
Yeah.
Because this is the one that just came up in my spiritual awakening, is the shame circle. And I said, can I circle back to that? Like, we've gone on to talk about other things, but can we go back to that? And you told me it was a pattern.
Yeah.
And that it keeps playing out. And I said, how do I heal this?
Yeah.
How do I walk through this? And I will share with you that a similar thing has happened in this lifetime.
Yeah.
You were right. And she said, without knowing our podcast or that we talk about it or that I've walked through these emotions and feelings, she said, oh, honey, this is the transformational lifetime where you're breaking the pattern. By you walking into it and through it, you are breaking your cycle. I have the goosebumps telling you this. She said the pure acknowledgement, the witnessing, and the allowing to feel.
Oh, so good.
And then she said, this moment of us acknowledging your past self and your past lifetime is not even just acknowledging this one, but that you've experienced it previously. You get the transformational life that this is the one you're breaking it, which is the craziest shit I've ever heard, ever. Like, and I feel this again, like I feel this wave of knowing that she's right. And that really frightening, vulnerable day where we let that episode go live in the world, that was really hard for me to hang out there. We had to let it hang out there. One, because I wanted people to not feel alone if they were walking through something. I also wanted people to know the spiritual journey is going to bring up some stuff. But we let it be published because this Akashic record reading happened much, much later, a year after we recorded it. And I had to share the synchronicity. I had to share the evidence.
The evidence
that this person who doesn't know me or my story used the exact words. It's so crazy.
And she evidence, but she also validates it for you who have felt this and who have experienced it and who had this awakening that, wow, it wasn't this rape, which was a terrible part. Like, it wasn't only that.
It wasn't only
like,
that.
That was something that you came to in this life, which you had to, is you go back to your other lifetimes in the Akashic Records, so that's a pattern to dim your light and to hide your gifts, and that now you're not going to do that anymore. And what way to not do that in this life and to do a podcast and tell the world?
Could it be more loud?
Could it be louder? It's so
okay.
It's so crazy. And can we pause for a second and just say that we've done a lot of things this year and like last year, and while we're doing the podcast, even before we did the podcast, Jenny and I have been on a healing mission, and we've tried all these places, and our podcast, we want to try things and share with our audience and let them know like what we liked, what we didn't like, what we're buying into. And you had another psychic use those exact same words. I'm remembering a story that you told after we had a psychic reading, and that psychic told you it was a transformational lifetime to break patterns.
That was the word.
It was the same thing from a totally separate person. And again, it's when we look, you and I are always comparing stories, obviously, to go the same things. And again, on the podcast and off the podcast, we're sharing this. And my stories are, no one's telling me this, are so different. And I have this motherhood theme that comes up, and they
control
remind
and motherhood
control
and
surrender and surrender and trying to let go of control and trying to I can't create everything by holding too tightly. And I get these same reminders in each of these different sessions I have, but they're so different than yours. And
so they're not generic.
No, it's not generic.
Just tell everyone and
exactly.
It fits.
It's not the same. It's not one size fits all. It's so different to the person, and it resonates so much when I hear mine, and then for you to hear yours, it resonates so much for you. And it just reminds us of the belief and why we're here and what we're trying to do.
We're
trying
not
to learn.
This up.
No, we're trying to learn in this lifetime, this human school, like you said before. Yeah. It's so crazy. And to have, again, another random person use the same words at you.
The same exact words. And and I feel to bring you back into the story too, I'm telling my Akashic Records, but I feel collectively, this is my favorite part of our journey, is a lot of times our egos are here's what I think I'm going to learn. And then we go to these readings. You even shared that you actually ended up processing your past life reading differently than what seemed on the surface.
Oh, 100%.
The story of what you were dealing with.
Yeah.
And you could go to someone reading you for any modality, and you could be in Arizona, New Mexico, or California, and everyone picks up on what your pattern is. And likewise, me too. And it really is one of our most beautiful collections of evidence that reminds me of this all being so real. Signs are my favorite every day, and this is my deeper soul purpose, where I remember there's a knowing in me talking about the story. And I actually needed this right now, because we sound so convinced while we're talking to you, and you and I both have been going through a couple weeks where we're low and needing to feel spirit and alive and connected again.
Right.
These stories are meant to be told because when we tell them, I believe again. And I needed to believe again today because I had a rough couple weeks. But honestly, it's so beautiful. And in this moment, I believe everything we're saying. And I needed to believe again.
Me too. And it does. It does. It brings us back to where we are, because we have, we've been in our heads. We've been in our human world so much for the past few weeks. It's just been you haven't been able to meditate. I've been not feeling signs. It's just crazy.
But I feel back because we had this combo.
Because we shared
it's a reminder.
It's oh my God, again,
it's wild.
It's there's no coincidence. We say that all the time too. There's no coincidences. There's no coincidence that these people are saying the same thing over and over again to you, over and over again to me, and we're processing it differently, and it's growing us as a soul.
It's so cool. And I'll tell you, to go back to the session how beautiful it is one of the things that's really cool about Akashic is its past, present, and future, which I didn't know before this reading. So we lightly went into future and present. I guess we rolled into present because we were really talking about walking through this pattern breaking. But this is one of my favorite parts. So again, I haven't shared that I'm recording a podcast. By the way, it's not live. We don't even know if we're going to hit,
Right, at the time,
We didn't even have an editing team or a company that helped us yet or anything like that. In any case, she continues on, and she had the coolest things to say. She was on a little wheelie chair. And when we started talking about right now and the future of this lifetime, she actually backed up and put her hands up, and she said, "Your light is so beautiful and white and strong. this is one of the reasons I know you're breaking the cycle. I feel your light from here, and the room can't contain you. You are about
Yes, okay.
you are about to shine your light in a platform.
Oh my
And
God.
I have goosebumps.
Oh my God. I have reading envy. I'm jealous again. Oh no.
so beautiful.
When someone tell me my light is so huge. No, it's great. I love it.
But it was about,
reading
wait, I have to be clear.
No.
This isn't braggy like I'm wonderful.
No, you're allowed. Stop it.
The light was, she said, that the reason this lifetime was transformational, I was meant to walk through it, talk about it, and then be a teacher and heal.
I love
Which I feel that. I don't know how that works into my next chapter of life, but I feel that to my core. And she saw it. And then the cool thing was, she talked about a platform not knowing that we had one.
Yeah.
And she said, yes, of course you do. Like, she laughed. She's like, that's perfect.
Oh,
because
I love
she was
it.
already seeing it. And it was really, really wonderful to hear. And that, like, rocked my world. And another theme that we've gotten in many of our readings is a lot of psychics and whatnot not knowing what we've been up to. We haven't shared this with people.
Yeah.
We like to go to readings and not tell them. A lot of them see a very specific arc for the podcast.
Yep.
And there's a specific timeline. And we've heard one way, shape, or form that we are bringing our light to the world.
Yes.
So anyway, it was
have both. That is one thing we both have heard simultaneously, like different, like from different people, but as part of our readings is that we are both meant to do something like this and to be a teacher and help people see things that they haven't. So that is something that has come up, which I love that she said that for you.
And also funny though too is because anyone who's ever read us knows we're Scorpios. So actually, it wouldn't be a generalization to ever tell a Scorpio person that you're going to go in the world and share your life story to help heal people. We're like private, so it's not a natural conclusion for an astrologer to make, right?
It's
we're private,
right?
We're deep and dark and emotional,
super private.
But we are private. So I think I almost love it more that you and I keep hearing this separately. So in this reading, the validation's beginning to end. But what I'll tell you is when I walked out of this room, Brian was at Miraval with me. And so I was doing a lot of the woo-woo. He did some with me, but this is one where I think he did archery or some cool manly dude thing. Yeah. I went to the hotel room and I actually had to lay down to process what I was feeling. I felt high.
Yeah.
I've never felt more connected to who I am as a human, as my soul, the oneness I felt with the world. And like, this is like an out there like thought. I loved the people she told me about. I loved the stories of the life and the person she was sharing with me so much that I walked out loving me. I felt a version of me as if I was in my next life and someone told me this story.
Oh, I
laid in my bed, and it was the middle of the day, by the way, but I needed a moment to integrate. I walked away with a confidence I've never felt in my life because it wasn't about this Jenny. It was about
your soul.
5 million versions of myself that have battled the battle. And I felt a collective energy of, we did it, guys. I don't know how to explain it. I felt so strong. And quite frankly, I go back to my everyday life and that cool, amazing feeling softens and it fades.
Yeah, which is fine.
Oh my God, I'm going to tell the story every day of my life because I feel it in this moment again. I just felt so strong and like connected and like we really do have a reason we're going through this bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, how cool would it be if this really is true that we have past lives, if you and I are working through it, that we've gifted our next life the next soul lesson to learn?
Right.
Like we can, can we move on from this crap?
Yeah.
Can we move on from this story? And like, yes, there'll be a new story. There'll be a new thing. I bet there's still remnants of this that you're supposed to cycle through again. But like, hey, did we just clear the air for the next life? It was really cool, beautiful, life-affirming, soul-affirming.
The soul affirming. Like you felt it in your soul. Like you felt it outside of your head. You didn't feel it as Jenny. You felt it as every version of your soul that's ever walked.
We were
and that will permeate to the future, Jenny.
The future
it's echoing.
Soul. It's echoing.
Yeah, and which is what she said. That's how it's like. That's how the transformation has happened. It's echoed forward. That's so neat.
But we're pushing the envelope on this one because I'm just going there. This is the one that brought a million readings together for me that we've done. A million heartaches together for me.
Yep.
It really was like, okay, thank you. And it brings me back to purpose. And I loved it. Oh, man, I loved it. I don't know that all readings end up coming across like this. I don't know, but this one was beautiful. And I love that it didn't come from my brain and someone else's.
That's my favorite part.
Yeah, I know you love that. It's our evidence.
Yeah. How did she tie it up with a bow, or how did she end it? Like, how was did you guys talk about it after? Did she have to
we really talked about the light and sharing the light. And we went through the different ways. And she was another person who said, a book one day, I need to write one day. So I've heard that as well. So anyway, she really did this happy ending of like where I'm going with it. But then she did the prayer to end it, where you again bring your name. Mm-hmm. And it seems like it's a truly important part of the process in Akashic is you have to close it. You have to physically close that book or the door or whatever it is you're opening. And that seems to be a really important part. There's a formal opening and a formal closing of the Akashic Records where you're like saying, I'm closing them down. You know, it's
very ritualistic.
It's very ritualistic, which I loved. And so she repeated my name and did whatever she said and closed it. And honestly, the energy in the room that I'd felt like kind of dropped.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you.
It was like where it almost bottomed out. But I had such a beautiful epiphany or understanding or knowledge bomb or whatever it was that I left like, I just left like walking through the halls like, do I look different? Because I feel different.
Yeah, you know? You are different. Yeah.
Anyway, so crazy story, right?
Awesome story. Awesome, filled with evidence story that is exactly why we're doing this. And I want to go to her now.
Now you got to go.
I do. I want to go have it read.
It's time to go back.
And I also want to do something like this where I want to take all the past life stuff. So I know it's different. The Akashic Records are different than past lives, but I want to see how that ties in to my past life regression one that I did.
Let's rephrase that. The modalities are different, but the content's the same.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're accessing similar information.
Yes, that's true.
So your past life story totally relates to Akashic reading because we're looking into this life, the past of this particular life, and then going below. So I think all these stories can come together despite the modality we went to.
Yeah, I like that.
Bring it all together.
It's
Let's
so
bring
true.
our wealth of knowledge from all modalities.
Yeah, and then it's like
let's put it in the pot of Carissa and talk about it.
Right, and then what modality do you feel most drawn to? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like where we come into. This is why we're doing this. It's like, there's so many modalities that we don't even realize are out there. And then
this is a good question. So we're about to take a break for a little bit, and then we're going to gear up for another season. And where are we going to go? Like, what's first on the list? Like, what would you be the most excited to do? Would you want to return to something we do, or do you want something new? I mean, we're doing both. But what's your first answer? What's your knee-jerk, like, next one?
I don't know. I need to figure out. It's funny, I haven't heard something like fall in my lap recently. Yes. Like a lot of these things that we've done this season have been because we randomly heard the word Akashic, because past lives we read a book, or like these things fell in our lap. Like your the one where what was the one that
astrocartography.
Astrocartography. It fell in our lap, like we didn't even know about it, and that's what I need. I'm going to ask the universe right now. Universe, send some stuff into my lap.
I love it.
Because I want like a new, or our listeners, anything is so cool that we haven't heard of, like send it to us. I want to try something.
You guys, I honestly, if you haven't already been to our Instagram, that's where you talk to us. And we are asking you, we're about to go explore. I even quite frankly, my frugal husband loved that we went to the witch retreat accidentally so much. He told me, go explore. So tell us the weirdest stuff you've heard of, know about.
Yes.
We're going to go do it.
Tell us.
But we want to keep exploring and keep sharing. And thank you for listening to all of our wild stories.
Thank you. We hope it helps remind you that there's more there. That's what it all comes down to. It's reminding us, and that's what we need. So.
That's so. Thank you for letting us remind ourselves.
Thank you for listening. We've loved being your spiritual travel guides and hope this made you feel more connected. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. Your reviews help us create the guide that you are looking for. We'd also love to hear your stories.
You could follow and share your experiences with us on Instagram at so.guided podcast. Your story might just be our next weekly woo-woo. Join us again next week as we continue to dig deeper into the universe. And remember, stay curious, ask the questions. You are so guided.